I am Eastern Command Assistant Commissioner Stephen Demetto, and I am joined today by key partners to announce a highly skilled multi-agency task force to target organised criminals that specialise in money laundering. Taskforce Avarus will focus on this key enabler of transnational serious organised crime and expose the criminals who are laundering billions of dollars into Australia every year. The task force will target sophisticated international syndicates that are providing a shadow economy and essentially are underworld banks. These syndicates launder money on behalf of criminals in Australia and around the world, and they are doing this for outlaw motorcycle groups, illicit drug syndicates, human traffickers and transnational serious and organised crime groups. Money laundering syndicates exist only to launder dirty money, and that illicit money bankrolls further crime and funds extravagant lifestyles to buy vehicles and property. This should outrage law-abiding Australians who pay their taxes, earn an honest living and skimp and save to pay the bills and to buy a home. The AFP has a laser-like focus on identifying and taking action against money launderers. The AFP's investigative resources now dedicated to the task force have executed 164 search warrants. It has arrested 42 people and 66 charges have been laid. Criminals have been deprived of more than $250 million of cash and assets. The AFP strategy of seizing money and restraining assets is our kryptonite to organised crime. Organised crime cannot exist without money or wealth, and the long arm of the AFP is also reaching offshore to target criminals who are impacting on Australian safety and on Australia's way of life. So our message today is clear. Not only are we coming after the money launderers and those criminals who use them, but we're also coming after their homes, their vehicles, their jewellery and their other valuables that they have bought with illicit money. I will now ask AUSTRAC Deputy CEO John Moss to make a few remarks.
Good morning. AUSTRAC is Australia's anti-money laundering and counter-terrorism financing regulator and Australia's financial intelligence unit. And we're delighted to be with our partners here in this task force. Money laundering is not a victimless crime. Behind every money laundering offence is a predicate offence. When money is being cleaned, there is an exploitation of a child, the harm caused by illicit drugs, or scam from working Australians. We will bring to this task force our relationship to the financial sector through the Fintel Alliance. We'll bring specialised financial intelligence analysts to work alongside AFP, Border Force and ACIC's financial investigators. We'll bring data scientists to look through the data sets to find anomalies that indicate money laundering. We are delighted to be here to protect our community with our partners.
The ABF is absolutely committed to combating money laundering and any other criminal activities through the border. This task force gives us the ability to effectively operationalise our presence at the border with all criminal activities. This task force also gives us the opportunity to work across Commonwealth entities to utilise our extraordinary assets and resources that we have to be able to tackle these crimes at the border. The message to syndicates: we see you. We are collaborating with our law border enforcement partners, and we will actually tackle not only money laundering but also all activities associated with this criminal activity. Thank you.
Money laundering is obviously a huge problem and has been for a long time. Why is it so hard to investigate and to prosecute this particular crime?
Money laundering is not a victimless crime, and there's real risk when it comes to money laundering, and it does affect Australians and Australians' way of life. In 2022, last year, the AFP put more resources towards money laundering to get a better understanding of the scope, the scale, the perpetrators involved, the methods they were doing, the vulnerabilities they exposed. And we had a lot of success, and on the back of that success, we thought it's now time to really build and work with our partners with this task force, and so they can really focus on the highest risk individuals, the individuals that are really causing us the most harm in money laundering.
Speaking about some of the, I would call them victims, but you know, these money launderers use tactics like innocent people's names to create fake bank accounts. Can you explain sort of how innocent Australians can also be tied up into this and why it's so important to tackle these guys?
It is true that other people's names are used by these money laundering syndicates. This can be done in a number of different ways. They purchase other people's identities or people that travel here, and these people return back overseas, not with an intention to return to Australia, but they also use steal identification information or use fraudulent documents to help them transfer money when they utilising those money transfers through the banks.
The process is offshore as well. They need assistance over there. You're getting that help from law enforcement overseas.
We work very closely with our international partners overseas. The AFP has got many offices overseas that work to combat this threat.
Can you explain how some of this tracking works? Because some of these tactics are very hidden and very secretive and complex. Can you explain how some of them work and how you tackle it?
Money laundering organisations are clandestine in nature, and they use numerous different methodologies to hide the money of these organised crime groups. In simple sense, they try to legitimise their business or banking or trade transactions, and they use fraudulent documentation to assist them with that.
Sid, you mentioned that part of the investigation is looking for anomalies in banking activity. What kind of anomalies would alert you to a potential money laundering syndicate?
I might pass to Morris.
There's many different typologies, and in the media release you see quite a number from AFP, and all of those have multiple variations. But you asked about money mules before, so an indication of that would be people who receive unusual deposits into their bank accounts, then withdraw it within 24 hours in cash, maybe 95% of the sum, and then that money's taken to a money remitter for an offshore transfer. That's a pattern that you can work with the private sector through AFP's relationships with banks or through AUSTRAC's public-private partnership with Intel Rights, set up profiles inside banking systems to alert law enforcement when we see these victims, because the money mules are victims that transfer the money. There's also the same typologies can be used for crypto and online payment platforms.
So you work with the banks to alert you to these?
Absolutely, they're very close partners. In Sydney and Melbourne, in AUSTRAC, we have banking analysts sitting alongside government analysts fighting money laundering. The same way that they work with AFP and Border Force, the private-public partnership is the future for law enforcement.
In terms of a lot of this money can be cash as well. So I know in the release it mentioned stuff like safe houses or using cash to purchase property or cars. Or can you just explain a little bit more of that?
Well, in the simplest form is and use money mules or people that collect cash. These organised money laundering organisations will collect cash from the criminal syndicates, and then they can store them in houses. And the thing is with these international money laundering organisations, they've got an international footprint all over the world. And so they store cash all over the world. So they can store cash here, but then that money can be released from one of their accounts overseas to the criminal groups in very quick time. So that's just one of the methodologies that they can use.
You're saying that it's an alarming scale money laundering, but to get dirty money, you've got to commit crime. Does that suggest that crime, and this sort of crime, not money laundering, but crime that creates money laundering, is out of control?
Money laundering organisations exist for only one reason, and that is to launder money for organised crime.
I agree, but I'm saying you're talking about lots and lots of money which has been generated by crime, and your job is to, prevent that crime.
Organised crime exists for one reason only, and that is to make profit. And what they try to do, of course, is to hide that money. And what they also try to do is then use that money to fund further activity that they want to do.
But are we
One-
losing the war? This is what I'm
Well, one of the AFP key strategy, and this task force, a very central part of that, is to disrupt the business model of these transnational serious organised crime groups by detaining the money and by keeping the money away from them so they don't cannot fund their business activities moving forward.
But what I'm trying to say is that to have dirty money, it takes crime to be committed. And so let's go away from the money laundering. I'm talking about the crime which creates it.
Crime is
we struggling to keep that intact.
Crime is targeting Australia, whether it's through illegal drug syndicates, whether it's through human trafficking, cybercrime, fraud. At the end of the day, they do this all for profit, and they need these money launderings to clean the dirty deeds that they're doing and to fund their continuous activity. This task force is world-leading. Around the world, it is of the highest international standard, is looked on by our international partners as the standard bearer to fight this and keep money away from these criminal groups so they cannot continue their criminal activities.
You mentioned in the release last year there was more than $250 million, or so far since this task force has been established, is $250 million worth of assets that have been deprived. Essentially, these groups have been deprived of it. How much is that of what is potentially being laundered or made through these criminal activities?
Look, it's very difficult to put a figure on it because the very nature of money laundering is that it is clandestine and that it is very complex. But we can very safely say that we believe there are $1 billion a year, billions of dollars a year being laundered in and out of Australia.
It's 2023. The public's going to ask questions like, why now? Why has it taken so long to set up this task force? We've known about organised crime and their ability to launder money for decades.
The AFP has a long history and been very successful in tackling money laundering in the past. What we've identified, though, through the great work in Operation Ironside and through the intelligence we gained from that, is that money laundering is a key enabler of transnational serious and organised crime. What this task force is the next evolution, working with our partners here so that we can tackle this crime and combat this threat to Australia using all our different capabilities.
You also mentioned one gang alone here in Sydney laundered $1 million per hour. If that's just one group, you just mentioned billions of dollars is being laundered, but how can you track that and prevent that if that's just one group you've noticed?
They use, money laundering organisations use a number of complex methodologies. The example that you mentioned is that these money laundering organisations have an international footprint around the world. They store money in all their different jurisdictions that they're based. Money is then deposited here by a cash courier or a money mule, but then released from money they have overseas virtually instantaneously, and that's why you get that sort of figure. In that example, though, arrests were made, and so we are really combating that threat, and this task force is a real good step closer to meet the real high risk of this threat that's threatening Australia.
Do you have a really strong message to some of these organised crime groups that are doing this?
These organised crime groups need to remember that we are here to take those money off you so you can't continue in what you do. The AFP, or the long arm of the AFP, doesn't only reach into Australia but reaches offshore to target these criminal groups that are threatening Australian safety and Australia's way of life.
How likely are they to get caught, though?
We've had 42 arrests since the task force began, 66 people have been charged, and over $250 million has been seized from these groups since this task force commenced.
Is there a message to them, though, that, as your technology and your abilities, broaden, that it's harder for them to get away with this?
Our message to money laundering organisations is now we are watching you, we will come and get you, and it doesn't matter what methodology you use, law enforcement action will find you.
Can I just ask one question for Workforce? Sorry. We noticed in some of the vision sent through there is stuff found in people's luggage, like gold bullions and what is your role and what have you found?
So through, obviously, as you mentioned, through traveller movement and also cargo movement, we do actually come across all sorts of things, not only just drugs and other items, including cash. So those are the things that we actually find, and those are the information that we actually share with our law enforcement partners to be able to assist with this task force in particular.
And how big of a role do you think that plays in this big picture of stopping money and assets being transferred overseas?
It's a critical role, because from an Australian Border Force perspective, we are looking at from a Customs Act, which are the goods movement, but also from a migration perspective around visa frauds and things like that. So as the AFP mentioned earlier, that the money laundering actually happens through a whole lot of criminal activities. So any criminal activities at the border, which all contribute to the money laundering in the end of the day. So we do actually share information and work very collaboratively with our partners, law enforcement partners, to be able to assist and build on that information to target those syndicates. The ultimate aim is to to get the money and profit from those criminality.
If you had to put a number on it, how many assets would you say is being seized at an Australian border?
I don't have the numbers in hand, but as the borders reopened, the passenger numbers and cargo volumes are increasing. Those things actually we see that often. And our officers are well trained to be able to identify those methodologies. Even though the methodologies are evolving, we are on the front foot through technology and officer training to be able to identify and detect and deter, but also importantly, share that information with our law enforcement partners to be able to get the actual core, the syndicates, actually playing a part in that.
Thank you.